I still remember how that paper felt in my hands. Stiff, clean, legal. But to me, it felt like a slap in the face. Now $432 due for resident services. That's what it said, in bold letters, as if I was just some stranger who'd overstayed their welcome in a hotel room. But I wasn't a guest. Hey, family. Before we dive into today's story, if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and comment below where you're watching from. And please, watch the story till the very end. Now let's move to the story. I was a mother, a widow, a woman who built that house with her bare hands and her husband's love. We laid the tile in the kitchen. We hung every picture on those walls. We raised a child in that house. We grew old there. So when my daughter said, "You're lucky we let you stay," something inside me shattered. Let me stay? I wanted to scream, cry, collapse. But I didn't do any of that. I just stood there, frozen. My body stiff like the paper I was holding. My lips couldn't form words. My heart couldn't make sense of what I was hearing. How did we get here? When did I become a burden? My Lily, my sweet girl, the one I'd rocked to sleep, spoon-fed soup, sat up with during fevers. She now looked at me like I was furniture left behind. No warmth in her eyes, just cold management. I didn't answer her. That day, I didn't argue. I went inside, closed the door, and stood in the hallway where the light always flickered above the mirror. Tom used to say he'd fix it. He never got the chance, and I stood there, holding that bill. Shaking. They thought I had nothing left. They forgot something important. I still have my mind, and I remember who I am. My name is Grace. I'm 63 years old. I live in a quiet town in Michigan where the winters are long, the neighbors wave, and people still bake casseroles for each other after surgeries. I used to be a teacher. 4th grade, 27 years. In the same school, same chalkboard, same classroom smell. Glue, pencil shavings, paper. The kind of scent that wraps around you like a memory. My husband, Tom, was a mechanic. Kind, quiet, and strong in a way that didn't need to be loud. He'd bring me flowers from the gas station and act like it was nothing, but it meant everything. We bought our house when I was 29. A simple one-story brick place with a blue door, and a front porch that Tom swore he'd rebuild one of these weekends. He never did, but I loved it anyway. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And we had Lily, our only daughter. She came late in our lives, after 3 miscarriages. I still remember the first time I held her. She was so quiet, eyes wide, open, like she was already studying the world. My little owl. Tom adored her. She was his whole world. He used to sing "You Are My Sunshine" every night at bedtime, even when she was too old to admit she liked it. We made her birthday cakes at home, played board games at the kitchen table. Tom built her a wooden playhouse in the backyard. I sewed her Halloween costumes. Every year she wanted to be something different. A doctor, a cat, a pirate. She was our everything. But things change. Tom died suddenly when Lily was 20. A heart attack in his sleep. No warning. No goodbye. Just silence in the morning where his snoring used to be. I remember sitting on the kitchen floor that day, the coffee pot bubbling, my hands shaking as I held his wedding ring. I never felt so small in my life. Lily cried a lot that first year. She dropped out of college for a while, came home. We leaned on each other. I kept myself busy by teaching piano lessons out of the living room. Anything to keep the lights on and my mind from falling apart. Eventually, she went back to school. Studied accounting. Smart girl. And then came Dan. He was charming at first. The kind of man who opens doors and laughs too loudly. but something in his eyes felt off. Like he was always scanning the room for something better. Lily fell for him fast. They were married within a year. At first, I tried to be supportive. He was her choice. I smiled at the wedding, baked cookies for their first apartment, but I could feel the distance growing. Not just between Lily and me, but between Lily and herself. She started dressing different, talking different, like someone had pressed a mute button on her spirit. Then Dan lost his job. Twice. He always had a reason. A bad boss, a failing company, never his fault. Lily called me one night crying. "We're drowning, Mom. I don't know what to do." I didn't think twice. I told her to move back in with me. They did. The house felt full again. I cooked dinner, ironed shirts, picked up after them more than I should have. But I didn't complain. I thought, maybe this is what family is for. After a few months, things calmed down. Dan got work again. They stayed. Paid a little here and there, but nothing formal. I was just happy to see Lily smile again. That's when the talk of the house started. "Mom," she said one night over tea, "what if something happens to you? Wouldn't it be easier if the house was already in my name?" I looked at her. She reached across the table, touched my hand. "It's not about control, I swear. It's just, if something ever goes wrong with Dan's debts, they can't come after your estate. It would protect me. Legally." I hesitated. She smiled. "It's just paperwork. You'll still live here. Nothing will change." And I believed her, because she was my daughter. So I signed. I handed over the title to the house. Told myself it was a smart move. After all, I had no intention of ever selling it. I wasn't going anywhere. Why not protect her from future problems? Even felt proud. Like I was helping her, again. But the moment she walked out of the notary's office, something in her eyes shifted. Just slightly. Like a door had quietly closed behind me, and I hadn't noticed. Over the next few months, little things started to change. Dan began calling the shots, on groceries, repairs, even what I watched on TV. He said, "We should start thinking of this place as ours." Ours. I didn't argue. I just smiled. Cleaned the kitchen. Folded their laundry. I told myself I was imagining things. That Lily still loved me. That she would never take advantage of me. Not my girl. I held on to that belief like it was a life raft. But a raft can only float for so long when someone is poking holes in it from below. Looking back now, I should have read between the lines. I should have listened to that tiny voice in my head, the one that whispered, "Be careful. Something isn't right." But I didn't. Because when you love someone, really love them, you don't think they're capable of turning you into a guest in your own life. I just wanted to help her. I just wanted to be her mother. At first, it was little things. Lily started staying in her room more. She used to pop into the kitchen just to say hi, or ask me if I wanted to watch a movie with her and Dan. But slowly, those moments faded. Then she stopped answering when I knocked. She'd say, "Busy, Mom." Or sometimes, nothing at all. Her voice changed too. It had a sharper edge, like she was always tired, or annoyed, or both. One morning, I baked cinnamon rolls, her favorite. I laid them out warm on the kitchen counter like I used to when she was little. The smell filled the whole house, sweet and soft, like home. She came in, glanced at them, and said, "You shouldn't eat too much sugar at your age." She didn't touch a single one. Dan came in after her, grabbed one, bit into it, and said, "Market's hot right now, huh?" Didn't answer. He smirked. This place could go for a fortune. I stared at him. holding the wooden spoon in my hand like it was a weapon I didn't know how to use. Then he winked at me, like it was all a joke, and walked away chewing. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan. It made a soft clicking sound every time it turned. I used to find that comforting. Now it just reminded me how nothing stays the same. A few weeks later, I started getting mail I didn't recognize. Envelopes addressed to me but with odd charges. Inside, shared utility fee, residence upkeep contribution, guest waste services. Guest. That word nearly made me drop the letter. I brought it to Lily. She didn't look up from her laptop. Oh, yeah. Dan's trying out a new budgeting system. Just ignore it. Why is it in my name? I asked quietly. It's just for records. Relax, Mom. She said it like I was being dramatic. I walked out of the room, holding the paper like it might burn me. I tried to forget it. Tried to pretend it was just a mistake. But then the thermostat stopped working. It was cold, and I tried to turn up the heat. The screen blinked. Admin locked Dan. I asked him about it. He said, "We're trying to control energy costs. For the whole household. But this is my..." He held up a hand. "Grace, don't make this hard." That night, I slept in 2 sweaters and socks, still shivering. Then came the cameras. Tiny ones, perched in corners outside the house, near the garage and the porch. Little red lights blinking at night like quiet eyes. I didn't even ask about those. I already knew. I tried to stay invisible. Tried to be helpful. I baked more. Cleaned. Stayed out of the way. One afternoon, I made lemon cookies and left them on a plate in the kitchen. Lily came in, picked one up, took a bite, and said, "Mom, maybe don't use so much zest next time." She didn't even look at me. I felt like a ghost floating in my own home. So I tried something else. I offered to help with the dishes, grocery runs, laundry. She gave me a look like I was being nosy, like I was the one invading her space. Dan didn't even pretend to hide his annoyance anymore. "You don't need to worry about chores," he said once. "We've got it covered." But that wasn't the point. I didn't want to be covered. I wanted to feel useful. Human. The house used to be filled with warmth. With the scent of Tom's aftershave and Lily's perfume and baked bread on Sunday afternoons. Now it smelled like air fresheners and silence. I walked from room to room sometimes just to remind myself I still lived there. I touched the walls, the corners of picture frames, the scratch on the hallway baseboard where Lily rode her tricycle too fast and hit the wall. I ran my fingers across the piano. Tom bought it for me after my first year teaching. I hadn't played it in months, maybe years. Every time I sat down to try, someone was in the room, or someone turned on the TV louder, or the quiet just felt too heavy. One morning, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the fridge. I wanted a little jam for my toast, just a bit of strawberry, the kind I always kept on the 3rd shelf in the pantry. I walked to the pantry door and stopped. It was locked. At first, I thought my hands were just weak. I tried again. Still locked. I stepped back, staring at the knob like it might explain itself, the door to my pantry. The one Tom built with wooden shelves and tiny labels I hand-wrote when we were young and broke and had to budget every can. Locked. I didn't say anything. Not to Lily. Not to Dan. I just walked back to my room and sat on the bed. I looked around. The furniture was mine. The pictures on the wall, mine. The soft blue curtains I made myself back when sewing made me feel proud, mine. And yet, I didn't belong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared out the window at the backyard. The wooden playhouse Tom built for Lily was still there, faded, a little crooked, but still standing. I remembered the summer he built it. Lily was 6. We played music while he worked. She danced barefoot in the grass, spinning with her arms wide, laughing as the sun hit her curls. I danced with her. We twirled until we both fell down. She looked up at me from the grass and said, "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to live with you forever." I laughed and said, "I'd like that." Now she wouldn't even let me have jam or warmth or space or dignity. I wasn't just losing my house. I was losing her. The envelope was thicker than usual, cream-colored, clean, the kind of paper that feels official when you touch it. There was a return address printed neatly at the top, a firm name I didn't recognize. I opened it slowly at the kitchen table. The air in the room felt still. Even the clock seemed to tick quieter. Inside was a bill, not a regular one, not a light bill or phone charge. This was formal, typed, stamped, with words like residential occupancy, back payment, tenant responsibility, and final balance due. It said I owed $8,750 for the past 11 months. To stay, in my own home, at the bottom, in small but sharp print, payable to Lily and Daniel Harper. I read it 3 times. My hands were trembling by the second. By the third, I couldn't feel my feet. I stared at that line like it was written in another language, but it wasn't. It was written in betrayal. I didn't call first. I put on my coat, slipped the letter into my purse, and walked the 2 blocks, to their new place. My daughter's new place. The one she moved into a few months ago, for space. Dan answered the door. He didn't look surprised to see me. He just leaned on the doorframe and crossed his arms. He said. "You got the paperwork." I swallowed. This can't be real." "It is," he said simply. "You've been living there, using resources. We have a right to collect." I stared at him. "That's my house. I raised Lily there." He shrugged. "You're not on the deed. You gave that up, remember? For inheritance." He made a little smirk on the word, like it was a punchline. "I didn't give up my rights. You gave us ownership. That includes financial discretion. You're not a guest. You're a tenant now." He stepped back and motioned inside. "Lily's here if you want to talk." I stepped forward. Lily was sitting on the couch. She looked small, legs tucked under her, hands in her lap. She didn't meet my eyes. "Lily," I said, my voice cracking. "Please tell me this isn't what I think it is." She looked down, didn't say a word. Just silence. I waited, but nothing came. The silence was louder than any scream I'd ever heard. I nodded slowly, like my body was moving without me. Then I turned and walked back outside. The cold air hit me like water, but I didn't feel it. My body moved down the street, but my mind was somewhere else. Maybe nowhere. I walked past the bakery Tom used to love. Past the church where we renewed our vows on our 25th anniversary. Past the school where I taught for 26 years. Places that once felt like pieces of me. Now they felt like pages someone else had turned. Sat on the front steps of the house. My house, and stared at the door. I thought of all the times Lily ran through it in muddy shoes, all the times Tom carried groceries through it while whistling, all the mornings I opened it to pick up the newspaper, smiling at the sun. Now it stared back at me like a stranger. Something fluttered on the front panel. I stood up, walked closer. A paper was taped to the door. Big black letters, unpaid rent, final notice. For a moment, I just stared. No tears. No yelling. No collapsing. Just a kind of stillness that lives in your bones when something inside you dies. I went inside, sat down at the kitchen table. The chair creaked beneath me. And I remembered. Tom. His voice, a summer afternoon, 10 years ago. We were sitting out back drinking iced tea, watching the grass grow dry in the heat. Lily was in college. Dan had just come into the picture. Tom was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "If anything ever happens to me, don't sign anything without reading it 10 times. I laughed and said, "You make it sound like someone's going to trick me." He looked at me then, dead serious. "Don't give away the house too soon, Grace." I waved him off. "I trust Lily." "I know," he said, "but trust isn't always returned." I didn't sleep that night. I sat up on the couch with the letter in my lap. Over and over, I read the same words. Tenant, balance due. Final notice. But I wasn't broken. I was sharpening. Somewhere in all the sadness, something else started to rise. Resolve. The next morning, I made tea, sat with my notebook, opened my laptop, and started researching. I read everything I could about tenant rights, about deed transfers, about property fraud and elder exploitation. I wrote down questions, circled, terms I didn't understand, reread articles 3, 4 times. I called a legal aid hotline, spoke to a kind woman named Denise. She listened quietly as I explained everything. I told her about the house, the transfer, the bill. There was a long pause. Then she said softly, "You need to speak to someone about this. You still have options. It may take time, but you're not powerless." That word stuck with me. Powerless. It was how I'd been feeling for years, and now someone was telling me I wasn't. I looked around the house, at the photos on the walls, at the corner where Lily used to build pillow forts, at the piano bench with the chipped leg. I wasn't going to leave quietly, not because I was angry, but because I remembered who I was. A mother, a wife, a woman who built a life one sacrifice at a time, and who still had a voice, even if they didn't want to hear it. The letter crumpled in my hands. Not from pain, from purpose. That night, I sat at my kitchen table in silence. No lights on, but the one over the stove. Just me, a notepad, and a pen. The ticking of the clock on the wall kept me grounded. It sounded almost like Tom's old wristwatch, steady, loyal. Not like the people I had trusted. I had no idea where to begin. I had no savings for a lawyer, no one to talk to. But I had something more dangerous than rage. I had time. And I had a reason. The next morning, I remembered a name, Clara Miles. She was a student I'd taught music to back when she was 9. Shy, soft-spoken, always wearing mismatched socks and reading case law like bedtime stories. Her mother once told me she wanted to be a lawyer because I told her, "You don't have to be loud to be strong." I searched her name online and found a small firm downtown. I called the number. "Clara Miles, how may I help you?" My voice shook. "You might not remember me. This is Grace Halpern. I used to..." She cut in. "Mrs. Halpern? The piano teacher? Of course I remember. You made me play Chopin even when I cried." I laughed almost. "You always had strong fingers." We met 2 days later in her quiet office. I wore my best blouse and brought cookies, out of habit. She listened, eyes wide, then narrowed. "You gave them the deed?" I trusted them. "Did you record the transfer?" "It was done at a kitchen table, not a title office." Clara sat back, jaw set. "Then they don't own the house. Not legally. The deed was never registered with the county. You're still the owner." My chest rose with a breath I didn't know I was holding. "But they listed the house as their residence on tax forms," she added. "That might actually help us. It means they're tenants. And you..." the landlord. I blinked. I can evict them? She nodded. Legally, yes, you can. The days that followed were slow and quiet, like snow falling without sound. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just started moving. First, I went to the water company and removed my name from the shared account. Then the gas, then the electricity, everything they had piggybacked on. I paid the final balances, shut it all off, and filed for separate service in my name, covering only my section of the home. I called the locksmith and had all the locks changed. Every single door, even the one to the pantry. There was power in the small things. Next, with Clara's help, I prepared a formal eviction notice. It was a plain white envelope. Tidy. Legal. I dropped it in their mailbox on a windy Tuesday morning. 3 hours later, my phone rang. I didn't even check who it was. I just answered. Mom? Lily's voice cracked like a twig. I said nothing. You served us? She whispered. An eviction notice. How could you do this to your own daughter? I waited for the ache in my chest to rise. It didn't. No, I said softly. You did this. To your own mother. Silence. You know Dan made us. I know what you let him do, I said. That's enough. She didn't call again that day. Dan showed up the next evening. I was pruning the hydrangeas out front. They were late blooming this year. He stormed up the steps like a puffed-up rooster. You think you're clever? He snapped. You're not getting away with this. I'll sue. I'll get a restraining order. This is elder abuse. I didn't flinch. I didn't answer. I turned my phone slightly in my hand. It had been recording since I saw him pull up. He leaned in close. You forget. I know the law. I looked at him. No, Dan. You forget. I taught someone who became the law. He stepped back, startled. What's that supposed to mean? I pressed stop on the recording and smiled. Goodbye, Dan. The official eviction hearing didn't take long. Dan tried to twist everything, said I was senile, said I was being manipulated. But Clara was calm, sharp. She presented the facts like a quiet hammer to a nail. The judge looked over the papers and said simply, Grace Halpern is the rightful owner of the property. The occupants have 30 days to vacate. 30 days. It felt like a strange countdown, not of loss, but of freedom. They didn't speak to me after that. Dan moved most of their things late at night, probably to avoid neighbors. Lily came during the day, alone. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying for weeks. But she never apologized, never knocked on my door. I watched from the window. Once, she held a photo of me, Tom, and her. She stared at it a long time. Then she packed it in a box and drove away. On the final day, I stood at the door. The sky was gray. The air was damp. The wind smelled like lilacs. I watched them leave. Dan didn't even look at me. Lily hesitated. She put the last box in the car, then turned. Our eyes met through the rain-speckled glass. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. But she didn't look angry either. Just hollow. And for a moment, I felt tears rise. Not for losing her, but for the little girl she used to be. The one who danced in the kitchen. The one who believed cookies could fix anything. As they drove off, I closed the door. I locked it behind me. Then I made tea. And for the first time in months, I breathed. It started with the walls. The living room had always been a soft butter yellow. Tom picked the color, said it reminded him of morning light. But after everything, the color felt faded. Not just from time, from memory. So I went to the hardware store and picked something new. A pale sage green, gentle, fresh. I rolled it. On in slow strokes, the sound of the brush against the wall soft and steady, like a lullaby. I did one wall each day, not because I was tired, but because I was savoring it. Each patch of green felt like taking a deep breath. When I pulled back, the old curtains, I saw how dusty everything had become, how silent. I donated Dan's leftover boxes, random electronics, broken tools, even a fake leather recliner. The thrift store man said, "You sure you want to give this much away?" I smiled. "Yes, I want space again." Neighbors started to wave again. Mrs. Landry from 2 houses down brought over banana bread and said, "We weren't sure what was going on, but we're glad you're still here, Grace." That simple word, still, meant the world. Still here, still standing. Still mine. A few days later, Mr. Rivera helped me fix the front steps. I offered him tea. We talked about tomatoes, nothing heavy. But the quiet warmth of community was back, and I didn't even know I had missed it that much. I signed up for the senior book club at the library. It met on Thursdays, in the cozy reading room near the fireplace. We read mysteries and old classics. I liked the sound of pages turning all at once. I liked the way people leaned in when they talked about characters as if they were old friends. On Saturdays, I started tutoring young girls in math through a local mentoring group. Some of them reminded me of Lily at that age. Bright-eyed, full of questions. One girl, Emily, clutched her pencil like it was a sword. "You're good at this," I told her. "No, I'm not," she frowned. "My brother says I'm dumb." I leaned in. "Then your brother is wrong." She blinked, then smiled. It was a shy smile, the kind that grows in stages. That night I cried, not from sadness, but from the feeling that I could still matter to someone. I began to walk more. In the mornings I'd take slow steps around the garden, talking to the roses like they were old friends. The wind would brush past me like soft hands on my shoulders. Sometimes I'd sit on the back porch with a cup of tea and write letters to Tom. I didn't send them anywhere, of course. I just folded them up and tucked them in a little wooden box under my bed. One letter said, "You wouldn't believe what they tried to do, Tom. But you were right. I should have waited." Still, I found my way back. Somehow. And then came Benny. He was a rescue dog. Small, scruffy, and completely uninterested in impressing anyone. When I saw him at the shelter, curled up in the back corner, I felt something shift in my chest. "What's his story?" I asked the volunteer. She looked at me, gently. "He came from a rough house. Took him a while to let anyone touch him." I knelt down and held out my hand. Benny sniffed it. Then he put one tiny paw on my knee. Just one. That was it. He was mine. The first night, Benny curled up beside me on the couch while I read. His breathing was soft, like a baby's. I reached out and ran my fingers down his back. For the first time in months, I smiled. Freely. Not the kind you put on for strangers, the kind that starts from deep inside. We became a team. He followed me room to room, waited by the door when I went out, slept near my slippers like he was guarding a castle. Once, when a squirrel darted across the garden, he barked so fiercely he fell off the porch step. We both laughed. Yes, I laughed. Out loud. One afternoon, as I wiped down the kitchen counters, I caught my reflection in the microwave door. I looked older, softer maybe, but also stronger. My eyes didn't hold that watery glaze anymore. They were clear, focused. I looked around the kitchen, the fresh green walls, the clean counters, the flowers in the little blue vase. I whispered, "This house has grief in its walls." My hand rested on the wooden table Tom had built all those years ago. "But now," I said quietly, "it has strength too." That evening, I opened the front window. The air smelled like fresh grass and lilacs. Benny sat by my feet, tail tapping, gently. Somewhere down the street, a child laughed. A bike bell rang. The world kept moving, not as a blur, but in slow, meaningful frames. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was waiting to be wanted. I was home. Truly home. I didn't go looking for updates. But sometimes the wind carries news whether you ask for it or not. Mrs. Landry mentioned it first, while we were watering her azaleas. "Did you hear?" she said softly, eyes lowered. "Dan's business went under. They shut the doors last week." I didn't answer right away, just leaned closer to her blooming pink petals. She added, "They moved into one of those basement apartments over by the gas station. Not much light, no yard." I nodded once. "I see." That was all I said. But that night, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the moon through the curtains. It hung low and quiet, like it was listening. I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. It was more like gravity letting go of my chest. A few weeks later, Clara called me. "Just thought you'd want to know," she said. "Dan tried to use your house as collateral on a private loan. The bank flagged it during a background check. He claimed he owned the place, filed some paperwork, false, of course." I closed my eyes. "He's in debt now," she continued. "They're coming after him for fraud and unpaid interest." I exhaled. "Thank you for telling me." She hesitated. "Are you okay?" I looked at Benny, asleep in his basket, legs twitching in a dream. "Yes," I said. "I really am." Then came the card. It arrived in the mail one crisp morning in October. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Lily's careful, slanted script. Inside it said, "Happy birthday, Mom. I'm sorry." Lily just that. No explanation. No excuses. I held the card in my hands for a long time. The paper smelled faintly like lavender. It used to be her favorite scent. I didn't rip it. Didn't burn it. I just folded it and placed it in the back of my recipe book, between the pages for apple crumble and cranberry scones. Some things didn't need answers. Some things didn't need more words. And forgiveness, I was learning, didn't always mean reopening the door. Sometimes it just meant not holding the handle so tight. Word got around, like it always does in a small town. People started to whisper. Mr. Rivera told me. They said Lily tried to volunteer at the library, but they didn't call her back. She used to be so involved, Mrs. Landry sighed. But folks don't forget so easy when it comes to family. Even the church newsletter stopped including their names in the donation lists. It wasn't loud. There were no pitchforks, no pointing fingers. Just a soft closing of doors. One day, I passed Lily at the grocery store. She stood near the eggs, holding a carton like it might fall apart in her hands. She saw me. I looked at her. Just a second. No smile, no scowl. Just quiet. She opened her mouth, maybe to speak, but then looked down. Her shoulders sank. She stepped aside. I walked past her and picked up a dozen eggs. They were on sale. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was the natural way water finds its level again. She lied. He took. They both forgot who built the ground beneath them. Now they were, living in the wake of it, not punished, just reflected. And I had my house, my garden, my music, my peace. This morning the sky was soft, like someone had taken a sponge and dabbed the clouds gently across a blue canvas. I carried my watering can out to the garden, the metal cool in my hands. Benny followed behind me, tail wagging, then flopped into the grass like a lazy lion. The lilac bush had started blooming again, purple clusters reaching for the sun, filling the air with that sweet, sleepy scent that always reminded me of spring. Mornings long ago, when Tom would make coffee and Lily would run barefoot through the yard, chasing butterflies. I sat on the little bench beneath it, the one Tom built from scrap wood one summer when we couldn't afford patio furniture. I smiled, tracing the worn edge with my fingers. Then I looked up, past the blossoms, into the wide sky. "Tom," I whispered. "I didn't think I'd have to fight at this age." I laughed softly, more to myself. But I did. The wind stirred gently. A petal floated down and landed in my lap. I thought I could just grow old quietly. Rocking chairs, bird feeders, maybe teach a few kids piano now and then. I paused, watching the sunlight catch in the dew on the grass. But life doesn't always wait for you to grow old. Sometimes it knocks everything out of your hands and asks you to choose, shrink, or stand up. I let out a long breath. I stood up. The truth is, motherhood never ends. Even when your child is grown, even when they break your heart, we give and give and give, and sometimes they forget. Forget that we were people before we were mothers, that we had dreams, fears, boundaries, that we built their world with our bare hands. But I remember now. I remember who I was before the bedtime stories, before the bills, before the silence. I'm not angry, not anymore. Some things hurt, but they don't get to define you, not if you don't let them. The garden was quiet, except for the soft buzz of bees. Inside, the house smelled like lemon polish and warm toast. The windows were open. My music books were on the table. My name, Grace, was on the mailbox again. I had come home to myself, not through shouting, not through revenge, but through remembering. They thought I was just a tired old woman in a house, full of memories, but they forgot I built this house, and I remembered how to stand.